I wanna roll with the gangsters. They're so far, they all think I'm too wide and nerdy.
We interrupt this program for a breaking news story.
We interrupt this program to bring you a shocking discovery. Galileo and René Descartes just posted a video on YouTube straight from heaven. For those of you with no internet nearby, here's the video.
Oh, finally, I'm out of the shower. The camera's rolling, we're on a rope, we're ready to go. René, you finally made it.
Galileo, why do we have to do this thing today? My hair is totally a mess.
Well, look at my beard. It's all unstraightened. And anyway, the camera's rolling already.
Hello, everybody out there in the 21st century. We are René Descartes and Galileo Galilei, and we are going to help you out on your history.
And I'm going to interview René Descartes about his life as well as mine. So, René, how did you get into heaven?
Well, Galileo, that's a long story. I was born on March 31st, 1596, in Turin, France. My mother died a year later, so I was raised by my grandmother. I studied at Le Fletcher, a Jesuit school built in 1604 as part of their defense of Catholicism against the ideas generated by the Protestant Reformation. My father was very rich, enough to buy me my own private room. I studied at Le Fletcher for 9 years, from 1605 to 1615. After graduating at the age of 19, I qualified for law at the University of Poitiers, but I declined it. Instead, I served in non-combat positions in the army of Martis of Nassau. During this time, I lived in Paris, traveled a lot, and moved to the Netherlands in 1628. I lived there for 20 years, and having received a comfortable inheritance, always had money. In 1649, I received an invitation from Queen Christina of Sweden asking me to tutor her in my philosophy. I accepted this letter and set off to Sweden on what will be known as my last living trip. I was a very late riser, but for the Queen one must always be on time, even if that time is 5 in the morning. I later caught pneumonia and died on February 11th, 1650. Just as I was in life, I was an avid traveler even in death. My body was moved to France in 1666 to be buried. Afterwards it was moved to many different places in Paris. Eventually my body was reburied in 1819 in the chapel of Sacré-Cœur in the church of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. While it was being transferred, my skull was removed and replaced with another. Not only was my body having issues after it died, but so were my papers. A friend of mine had shipped them from Sweden, but the ship carrying them sank right outside the Bay of Paris. Luckily, my friend Claude Clairsley salvaged the chest that was holding the papers and spent days drying them out. These recovered documents included the texts of Treatise on Man, the World, and Treatise on the Formation of the Foetus.
Wow, René, that was a very interesting story.
Thank you.
I mean, something like that happened to you, like, my life does not compare to you.
Well, how was your life?
Well, this is going to be a long story. So it all started when I was born in the city of Pisa, Italy, on February 15th, 1564. I was a son of Vincenzo Galilei, who was an accomplished musician, and Giulia Amananti, a higher social class woman who has been characterized as an ill-natured and a demanding woman. I also had 5 siblings, of which only 4 survived. I was also brought up during the decades of the Italian Renaissance, during the Protestant Reformation, and during the Counter-Reformation, when education became an important aspect of life and would ultimately lead to my pursuit of sciences. At first, I wanted to become a monk, as what seems to be every child's dream of that period of time. But to my luck, my father disagreed with my wishes and enrolled me into university. At age 16, I was already entered at the University of Pisa to study medicine. While studying medicine, I discovered my wild passion for mathematics and found myself a tutor with Stelio Ricci, who was a mathematician in the court of the Tuscan Grand Duke. Even though my passion was mathematics, I still pursued medicine. Thus, in 1583, at the age of only 19, I made my first discovery. But my unenthusiasm in medicine led to my failing grades and resulting in me being forced to leave the University of Pisa without a degree. For the next 4 years, I tutored mathematics and continued to make experiments of my own. One of the experiments led to the creation of a device that measures the relative weights of alloys in a metal, improving the works of ancient mathematician Archimedes. With private tutoring and experiments of my own, I wanted to become a university professor, but me being underqualified for most positions, I had been rejected all across northern Italy. But to my fortune, in 1589, a position at the University of Pisa was opened. I became a teacher of mathematics. I continued experimenting and even challenged the idea of Aristotle. The heavier the object is, the faster it falls. But since I was a young and sharp-tongued teacher, I created many enemies, mostly made of much older professors, resulting in my leave from the University of Pisa. By this time, I had a rather strong reputation because as soon as I left the position at the University of Pisa, I was chosen to be a chair in mathematics at the University of Padova. My time at Padova is known to be as the happiest years of my life. I became an important figure, gained riches, and also gained a mistress, Marina Gambi, who gave birth to 2 of my daughters. While with all these joyful events, I never stopped experimenting, and it was during this period that I accomplished most of my work in the field of physics. I established the basic principles of the lever and the pulley, experimented with inclined planes, and also found the law of inertia. But as I continued experimenting, a new passion arose: astronomy, the study of heavens. Through my findings, I published the book The Starry Messenger. Thus, in 1610, I gained appointment as the first mathematician at the University of Pisa, and first mathematician and philosopher to the Grand Duke, as well as a much larger annual salary and exemption from the obligation to teach classes. I then immediately moved to Florence, while abandoning my wife and my 2 daughters for the sake of my studies. During the time of 1610 through 1615, I promoted heliocentricity as a fact and no longer a theory, which challenged the Holy Scripture and the Church. But I was busy with other matters, having intestinal ailments and problems with the Germans. The debate on heliocentricity remained muted until 1615. I stated in my letters that inasmuch as the Bible calls for an interpretation differing from the immediate sense of the world, I wrote, it seems to me that as an authority in mathematical controversy it has very little standing. I believe that natural processes which we perceive by careful observation or deduced by cogent demonstration cannot be refuted by passage from the Bible. I even go on to say that the primary purpose of the Holy Writ is to worship God and save souls. This is when the Church was ready to go on the offensive and began to gather evidence against astronomers in preparation for my trial. In 1615, I traveled to Rome to hopefully gain more followers of astronomy and heliocentricity, but I underestimated my obstacles. The Church was determined to prove their righteousness. Pope Paul V concluded,